that the reporter from Brunswick, Lindsay, that always sits right here, has had a stroke. And I learned this at the board of trustees meeting at the college. And since I've had a couple more phone calls inquiring about her condition and verified what I had heard. I have not been given any official information, but my understanding is it is extremely, extremely serious. And I'm scared to say the circumstances because I might be wrong, but I would just simply say, as we go into our moment of silence, keep her and her family in your prayers. So let's, if you will, bow our heads for a moment of silence. Thank you very, very much. And we'll officially call the meeting to order and say welcome to all of you. And let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag to my right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I understand there's possible modification to the agenda as presented. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
We,
at the end of the report adjournment, we'd like to go into a closed session with the attorney for attorney-client issue.
that would be number 22 and a half.
Yes, sir.
Everyone understand what we propose to do?
And there's a deletion from the agenda. There's Mr. Evans's item at number 16. He's taking ill today, and that needs to be deleted from this month's agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda? So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimously amended. And we turn to number 5, consideration of the minutes. And I ask, consider doing A, B, C, and D in one motion. We have a motion to include all. Is there a second? Second. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
By the way, any of you in the audience that can't hear, raise your hand and we'll try to improve our communication skills. And number 6 is the public comments. No one has signed up. Did we miss anyone? Okay. Number 7. We have extreme pleasure tonight to turn our attention to Eagle Scout. Mr. Hewitt, who is going to?
Ms. Ferguson.
Ms. Ferguson.
Good evening. At the May 13th, 2019 meeting of Troop 262, Mr. Todd Robbins here was awarded his Eagle Scout Award. He met with staff and decided that the project that he wanted to take on for the town was to make improvements to our park course on Ocean Boulevard. This project took 15 hours using a total of 12 people. Todd and his dad, Brad, did want to point out that Mayor Holden provided assistance at the request of the scouts to get permission to dump rock in the driveway between stations to make it better for them and easier with navigating between stations. Barnhill Contracting donated the cost of hauling the rock. The total project cost was $796.80, and of that, the town only had approximately $100 tied up in rock that we had on hand that they used. So I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the town to present Todd with a certificate of appreciation, and we would like to give
appreciate it.
Congratulations.
All right, we're on number 8 on the agenda. Mr. Combs, I'm glad you're here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor Holden, and members of the town board. My name is Tommy Combs, and I represent the North Carolina City Family Managers Association and the International City Managers Association, and we call that ICMA for short, Save a Breath. And I serve as the senior advisor. Senior advisors are a group of retired managers that we make ourselves available to municipal and county managers at no charge to discuss their professional and personal situations. Most of us have served in excess of 30 years. I have served 54 years. And you know, this can be a lonely profession when you have to make some decisions. And at times, you can get kind of lonely. But since we have experienced the problems and the frustrations as well as the joys of managing a local government, we're willing to share that experience with any of those managers who request it. Our aim is to be considered as a friend, a colleague, and sometimes as a counselor. Holden Beach, I've been here before, believe it or not. In the mid-1960s, my wife Linda and I, along with several other young married couples, would come to Holden Beach each summer from Greensboro, where I lived in. And I'm surprised at what I found. It's a lot different. And I compliment you on what you've accomplished here in Holden Beach. Now get down to the reason I'm here. I want to thank David for asking me here tonight. It's an honor and a privilege to make this presentation on behalf of ICMA. On April the 24th of this year, David received notice from the International City Managers Association that he had achieved the designation of Credential Manager. Briefly, I'd like to explain to you what a credentialed manager is and the requirements to be designated as a credential manager. You must pass the scrutiny of 3 groups: the ICMA Credentialing Advisory Board, that's a mouthful. Then they place your name in an ICMA publication, and anyone in the association can make a comment about your credentials. And finally, the executive board of ICMA has to approve it. You must have significant experience as a senior manager. David has over 20 years as a manager in Leland, Caswell Beach, and Holden Beach. And prior to that, several years of responsible leadership in the U.S. Air Force. You must have earned a degree in or related to administration. David has earned a Bachelor of Science degree from East Carolina University in Business Administration with emphasis in economics and quantitative methods, a Master of Business Administration from Golden State University in San Francisco. He has completed the UNC Institute of Government Municipal Administration course I went through that in 1973.
So,
Auburn University Kennedy School of Government, and Pepperdine University in Public Treasury Management. Also, you must demonstrate a commitment to high standards of integrity and lifelong learning and professional development. Once you achieve this designation of a credential manager, you must develop a plan and submit an annual report to ICMA on how you have continued your professional development. I don't know if they take it away from you if you don't present that report each year, do. But David has met all of these requirements with distinction. It's a pleasure for me to say that ICMA recognizes David Hewitt as a credential manager. David, I would present you with a plaque, but I don't think it's...
I'll settle for a handshake.
Thank you, Mayor and Board.
Well, thank you for being here. I hope you have another 25 or 50 years of
So do I.
sharing. I'm trying to do my math from 66 to 2000. What's that? 34 years plus 19 years since he's been here. A long time. Okay, number 9. Lockwood Folly Inlet and Way.
Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Fran Way. I'm a coastal engineer with Applied Technology Management, and I'm just going to go over just some kind of the bullet points of the study. And you will have we're completing the study, but you'll have the completed study by the end of the week. So just the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing. It's where the Intercoastal Waterway, and I'm sure I've repeated some. A lot of you are very familiar with this project, but I'm just going to step back and just kind of explain it. It's right back in here, the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing. It's where the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway and the Lockwood Folly Inlet meet. And this is basically, there's two different things that the Corps does out there, and I'm sure everyone's seen it. The sidecaster dredge, he works out here, the outer ebb shoal, and in here. And then the cutterhead dredge works the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing, and that's back in here. They do that about every other year. This is basically, this analysis is focusing on the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing, and we have to, they're interrelated, so we do talk about this a little bit, but it's really about this project right here that happens every other year, and that the east end of Holden Beach is usually the standard spot which gets the benefits of sand. Lockwood Folly Inlet project. The one reason, kind of while we're here now, is that in 2019 the sand got put on Oak Island and not on Holden Beach. There were a couple different reasons. One of them was that Oak Island said they needed sand, but then there were some other ones, the easement-related issues and things like that. But so you can see, this is the Lockwood Folly Inlet, the Lockwood Folly Inlet crossing area, and instead of putting it here on the east end of Holden Beach, they put it over here on the west end of Oak Island. So we wanted to kind of look at that, and basically the east end of Holden Beach is a highly erosional. It's one of the most erosional beaches in Brunswick County, and this project is a critical element to keeping this beach, healthy and stable. And so, obviously there was some concern with the town that this sand was going elsewhere. Now within the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing, there's also something called the Bend Widener. The Bend Widener is, you can see that the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway is about 100 feet wide, but you can see that they kind of do this, dredge out this little area, depending on kind of how much advanced maintenance that the Army Corps of Engineers does, and the Army Corps of Engineers really does this. The 50-foot bend widener is pretty common. This is like an image from, I think, 2009, where the Corps did that. But see, the 400-foot bend widener, that's actually something that happened back about 2010, in 2010. Basically, pre-2010, the bend widener was 50 to 100 feet wide, and the total project you'd get maybe biannually like 30 to 80,000 cubic yards of material. Not a lot of material, but not a bad amount, and definitely worthwhile. But in 2010, the economic stimulus package, where the Corps got infused with a whole lot of funding, they came and went to this 400-foot bend widener, and all of a sudden, you're getting about 140,000 cubic yards of material, a lot more material, ever since 2010. So they the Corps did that project, and they kind of set the precedent that this 400-foot bend widener, they really have never used that before in the last 20 years or so. Usually they're very strapped for cash, and they just do the minimum possible. So the town of Holden Beach, we said, they said basically 2014, 2017, they said, we want to use that bend widener material and put that on the beach as well. And the town did that. In 2013, the state came in with their own separate funding mechanism, the state shallow draft dredging fund, and they also established an MOA, memorandum of agreement, with the Corps. So all of a sudden, the Corps is pretty much strapped for money year in and year out for these dredging projects. Now all of a sudden, the state is saying, okay, well, we can help you out with this. And so, obviously the 400-foot bend widener is a lot more, economical at this point. And that was maybe one of the reasons why Oak Island's kind of getting into this now, because the town was actually paying, in 2014, we were planning on doing that project whether or not that state funding was available, just because it's a great place to put material that is cheap, even without state funding help. These are just the Division of Coastal Management long-term erosion rates. And they just pretty much show you, here's Loch Macquarie Inlet, and on the east end, the erosion rates of 5 to 7 feet per year of erosion. It's very erosional, highly erosional. And then on the west end of Oak Island, it's a lot like the west end of Holden Beach. It's actually accretional. It's growing. And the long-term, so it's stable to accretional. Every now and then there's a little hot spot. Maybe some of those houses are a little closer to the beach out there on the west end. Even on the west end of Holden Beach, there are some times where there's a hot spot here or there where you can see some dune scarping, but the dune field is just so wide there that you never have to worry about that. But it's pretty clear, even with the Division of Coastal Management, that the erosion, there's one beach is accretional and one beach is erosional. This is the Loch Macquarie Inlet crossing history, and this was the NC Beaches Inlets Management Plan. Kind of did this. Basically, this is since 1971. There have been 41 projects where they've been dredging Loch Macquarie Inlet crossing and putting it on Holden Beach's east end. Basically, it's the standard plan. It's the base plan. 41 times from 1971 to 2017. For Oak Island, there have been 5 over that same 48 period span. And basically, Holden Beach right down here is the base or standard disposal plan, and this is from the Corps. They said the least costly alternative is consistent with sound engineer practices and guidelines, and basically it's the least costly alternative. That's really kind of what you need to go with. And the Holden Beach east end is the closest distance, and it saves money on mobilization fees, and it's the cheapest alternative. And it's the base alternative. And even, you can tell by the way that the Army Corps of Engineers have been putting material on the beach, 41 times in 48 years, that it's obviously the base or the standard plan, the least costly. And then there's just some history on the east end. These are photos from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Even in the 70s, they actually did like sandbag groins on the east end of Holden Beach. And then these are images from Dr. Clear from the NC fan. And 1986, 1998, 1996, 1997, houses on the beach. Over this time, there were about 41 houses that were lost because of this erosion. And then the west end has been accretional to stable. This is hard to see here. Here, this is a 1993 aerial and 2018 aerial with that same line. And if you look at just the dune line, you can see that I did some measurements. Basically, the dune is accreted over this 25-year period, anywhere between 50 and 150 feet. The dune is grown, and the beach is grown. But they're still, they still really want to use that Lackawanna Inlet crossing sand, but the east end of Holden Beach really should have priority. Even the west end of Oak Island, this is, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about the Brunswick County Beaches project. That's a core project for coastal storm damage reduction, CSDR. Basically, back in 2012, the Corps did a big, really complex economic study about, about the cost and benefits of placing sand and protecting infrastructure and beaches and doing core projects. They came up with the same positive net benefits, and that's where they basically decide to say, okay, we're going to, this section of beach qualifies for Army Corps of Engineer, CSDR project. And you can see over here the east end of Old Beach clearly qualified. Really strong positive net benefits. These bar charts, the higher the bar, the better. And then you see over here in the west end of Oak Island, none of it made it. About the 2 or 3 miles on the west end of Oak Island didn't even have positive net benefits. They weren't included in the BCB CSDR project. It's just that reach of shoreline is just not even a vulnerable piece of shoreline, and the Corps didn't even include it in their CSDR project. So we kind of did some modeling. We did some modeling of the beach fill here on the east end where it usually goes, and we did some modeling there. And then we also kind of looked back in here, and we also looked at the channel orientation out here. And we basically we found that the modeling, there's a big question of where does this material end up? And so we wanted to kind of look at that and with the modeling, and we also wanted to just kind of see how the material performed. One key component to that is basically the channel orientation and where the dredge channel is it closer to Holden Beach, is it closer to Oak Island? So we looked at that, and then we looked at this kind of the shoal migration where these slugs of sand will kind of detach from Oak Island and they'll make it slowly over a period of a couple years. They'll make their way around the inlet and then attach from the Holden Beach side. This is the modeling that's really getting that. And this is just more of a schematic. And a lot of times this channel, where it's oriented to the southeast or the southwest, it's all kind of based on these shoals that are detaching and moving across the inlet. And that's one thing where the dredger, the sidecast dredger, does kind of follow deep water. But a lot of times these shoals are really the things that are creating that channel alignment. And so we just needed to look at that for sensitivity analysis. So we looked at the southwest channel and the southeast channel, and then we went back and looked at the historic channel dredging of the Corps out here. Back in 2000, they were really far to the Oak Island side, but basically for the last 10 years or so, they've been pretty centrally located, a shade over on the Holden Beach side. And I know when you see the sidecaster out there, it does look a lot closer to the shore, but it really is basically centrally located. And then here's those historical shipwrecks. But interestingly enough, 2010, 2011, they just ran the channel right through the historic the Civil War shipwreck district, and they actually even had some notes for they hit the Iron Age. So some of them they'll just go right through that shipwreck field. But so this is kind of where it is, and so we just wanted to make sure there is a lot of Dr. Cleary especially, where he said basically if the inlet's over on this side, Holden Beach does better. If it's over on this side, Oak Island does better. And we saw a little bit of that, but we didn't see anything significant. It was 5 to 10% effect. So basically, the beach has been doing well because there's been a lot more material. They're putting, 140, 150,000 cubic yards of material every 2 years from 2010 to now. The beach has been looking good, and then obviously the Central Reach project is kind of working its way over. So the beach is looking okay, but the Lockerball Inlet crossing is a critical component. We also looked at a sediment budget, and this is based on the modeling and everything. But we did see that, and lots of arrows, lots of numbers here. But the major takeaway is that about 5 times as much material is coming from Holden Beach versus what's coming from Oak Island into Lockerball Inlet crossing. And that's kind of significant just because when Bald Head Island and Oak Island really kind of got into it on whose sand and who's that, the Corps of Engineers said, we're going to put it back from where it came. And so for this sediment budget, we're saying that basically 5 times as much of that material came from the whole beach east end. And that actually also agrees well with the erosion rate comparison, which is about 5 times. The erosion to Holden Beach's east end is about 5 times as erosional as the west end of Oak Island. So here's just a summary. Basically, the Holden Beach's east end has been the base standard, least costly method. The dredge, lobe, and deload costs are about 15 to 20% lower for the whole beach east end than they are for Oak Island. And so right there, that's why it's the base plan. The erosion rate is 5 times higher than the west end of Oak, and the Lockerball Inlet crossing deposition is 5 times higher. The Corps doesn't even include the west end in their BCV project, and basically since 2010, with that additional bend wider, it's really proved to be a critical element to the health of the east end. And then, obviously, with the state funding contributions expected to continue, we're going to really definitely try to maximize that and use that 400 for bend wider. And this is my summary, and that's it. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. The bed widener, do we expect that? Is that in the plan to continue for as long as we execute? No?
Yes. We would recommend it, and especially, and a lot of times the Corps, there's several different ways you can go about it, and the town did that in 2014, where basically they piggybacked the Corps project, where the town got their own separate permit and contracted with the dredger separately. And then the 2017, the state used that MOA to kind of, the Corps just did everything under its own contract. Interestingly enough, this year, 2019, they didn't have enough time to do the bend wider, and so obviously now they're planning to do this project again in 2020, this winter. And there should still be a good amount of material there because they didn't touch the bend wider this past spring. So.
And they did it this year, they expect to do it the following year. Has that been the case? I thought it was every other year they did the dredging on the intercoastal waterway.
It varies. It has been. They did one in 2009. They did one in 2010. And a lot of times the follow-up one is small, like 30,000 cubic yards. And a lot of times they'll bundle a few projects up and down the coast, and they'll just hit this really quick and move on. But no, because it is. And if you look at that chart about the 1970s, it was about 41 projects over 48 years.
Yes.
So it is almost, it seems like a biennial project, and that does make the most sense, biannual. But yeah, it does happen, annually a lot more.
Yeah, and this is really critical to us at this point in time, because the crossing is 70 to 80,000 cubic yards
Yeah.
alone. But if you throw on top of that the crossing, you're up to close to 200, right?
Yeah, you can pretty much double it, and then maybe even a little bit more.
Fran, the reason that you were asked to conduct this study
Yes.
was because, as against all the history
Yes,
and the financial benefits, the Corps
Yes.
determined that they were gonna put it onto Oak Island, so we decided that the only way
Yes.
we could combat that was to have some empirical data. So I would say after listening to this, does Oak Island have any legitimate argument that would justify putting the sand on Oak Island rather than on Holden Beach in the future?
I hear that they're developing a model and, for the inlet as well. It's, they'll show you pictures of one little hotspot on the west end. And that's what they kind of showed us, and then they blamed a little hole off the near shore that was causing the hotspot erosion. Besides a couple, and even then, there's still a pretty fat dune system that's right in front of the home, those few homes. Much more dune than there is on the east end. I don't really see it, but.
Well, once every 5 years, I guess, because you said it's 5 years.
Yeah, well, that's yeah,
And then, but the proposal being thrown out is, all.
exactly, 50/50.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't at all.
At this
I
stage.
guess that's my point.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
we now have the empirical data that we should be able to rebut their
Yes.
argument that they're entitled to an equal distribution of the sand.
Yes,
I'd like to point one thing out about the economic analysis there, that the demode costs are 15 to 20% lower than the Oak Island placement. Not only is it less on a per accomplishment time, the cost less on a per accomplishment time, I would submit that as a larger programmatic cost, it actually, placement on the Oak Island actually increases the frequency need to dredge the inlet, and therefore is a higher cost over a span of several years because of the need to mobilize the side caster dredge with the sand falling back in the inlet. So there's more than just a per accomplishment time cost, but it also drives the need to dredge more frequently in the inlet. So, and that cost is primarily borne by either the local and state shallow gap inlet fund.
But Fran, you mentioned, you didn't say inlet, you said the waterway for the migration. Is it the inlet and waterway? From Oak Island, the sand migration?
we didn't, I think there's a small incremental,
I
because
agree. That makes
because you're putting that sand in, and it's getting, a lot of it's getting to that outer edge shoal. And so, yeah, we could add something in about that.
So the miles of waterway, not the inlet?
Well, basically this, yeah, it's basically when this sand gets here, this sand actually goes out around, and this is what we kind of think, the regional net transport is from this way to that way. So the sand's kind of doing this, but then in all these inlet shorelines, and this inlet shoreline and the whole beach shoreline is kind of set back from that one. So this is doing this, and then it's kind of getting in there. So I think David's talking about when you put the material here, it's getting out here and kind of interfering. Is that what you were talking about? Yeah.
That's where the side caster has to work.
Yeah.
That's
So
what-
it's almost like it hits here and it comes around and then it kind of goes in and keeps going that way. But there's really a small component right here, and I think it's this offset. The shorelines are, offset, a few hundred feet if you kind of try to draw a line from one side to the other.
So the Ben Widener's sand, the additional sand is closer to the Holden Beach side? If it has to be extracted?
Yeah, and even then, I'll have some, you can even see it right along here where this
Right.
section of shoreline is erosional. And that's even something else. I mean, when they dredge this actually puts a little more stress on that Holden Beach shoreline. So, you could even argue that your estuarine shoreline is getting impacted a little by this. And I don't think you ever want to put the sand there, what you want to put out here, but that is actually probably a good point as well. So maybe bring that up. I don't think I did, but make sure that it's in there.
Barge traffic would help, I would think, in that area?
little deeper. And, you know, it's been stated that it'll also, the widener, if you go along with the widener and take more sand out, that it would help barge traffic as well.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah, you may want to list that as another benefit.
Mhm. Okay, well,
Fred, while we have you here, can you take a minute to give us just a quick update on the sand search?
yep,
status?
we basically
Schedule.
have started that. In June, we hope to, you know, do our first, there's a couple different, we're gonna redo some of the seismic stuff where you're looking kind of between 0 and 10 feet below the surface with a tow fish and just trying to, so we're gonna try to we're planning that to happen in June. And that'll be the first step in that sand search.
I'm sure you saw in the newspaper,
Yeah, and
raise the sand.
yeah, I heard them, and they mentioned the Central Reach project. Now, the Central Reach, it'll be interesting if they can do that, because obviously, we think there's only about 500 to 600,000 cubic yards of material in there. And I know that they need more than that, and I know the town needs more than that. Yeah, I guess we'll just see how, yeah. It would be great if we could use that. Because, I mean, obviously the town spent the money, did the studies. It is kind of over on the offshore of the west end of Oak Island, but that was, you know, we spoke to them about it. It was, you know, several miles offshore, 35 feet of water. Yeah.
It's not your.
No, and yeah, we think they should use Jaybird Shoals on the other side.
So we're kind of, you know, schedule is important, right? We're
Yeah,
kind
oh, yeah.
of in a race to,
Yeah.
not kind of, we are in a race.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, it's not only the race, I mean, it's also the
Schedule.
fact of the timeline, and, you know, FEMA's involved in this too as well, and, you know, reimbursement, so, have you had a chance yet, your firm had a chance to put together a, you know, a preliminary draft timeline for this project?
Yes, we did, I gave that to David.
Based on,
Oh, just the data collection.
Okay.
We put some time on the data collection from, you know,
Yeah, when we're doing for our budget
Yes,
exercise.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to have just some schedule,
yep,
be it preliminary or
Yeah.
not, just some schedule so we can understand that.
Okay.
That we're gonna make the two-year.
2 year
Yep.
agreement, yeah.
okay.
Does, David, to your knowledge, does Oak Island have a permit yet so that they can access the sand source?
I understand they've got a CAMA permit, but a CAMA permit only allows you to go forth and get your other permits. And to what extent they require, you know, the federal permits, I do not know.
Okay, so we're gonna put together a draft
Yes.
timeline, right? Okay,
Thanks, Fran.
thank you.
Tri Beach Fire Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Holden, Assistant Fire Chief. Chief Todd couldn't be here tonight. He had to go to town after he got put on the agenda. So he's out of state all this week. But I think you guys, I should have a sheet to have some statistical data and some information on there for you. Since we hadn't been here a while, I figured I'd give you a little bit of 2018 statistics as far as the fire department goes. You can see in 2018 we responded to 1,429 calls for service. Those are live maintenance, the services obviously we provided. We'll go down to that a little bit lower, but you can see where most of the calls on the mainland side of our fire district, what we cover there, 81% of the calls were there. Holden Beach, comprised 221 of those calls were 15%. And then mutual aid calls were 57 or 4%. Mutual aid bid, that can be locally with our immediately neighboring departments, city, town, supply, SHLO. We do mutual aid, what's considered, you know, they have a house fire or what's something and need some additional help, we provide that to them. And it could be other things from going to, like recently with Oak Island, and the large fire on the beachfront, be assisted with their, as do most departments in the county. So far in 2019, this data is not 100% accurate because it's continually changing. We've had some calls since I compiled this data yesterday. We responded to yesterday morning 444 calls, 374 of those on the mainland, 48 on Holden Beach, and then 22 calls on Mutual Aid. You can see most of our calls do happen on the mainland side, which is good. It's a nice, quiet, safe place to be for the most part. Also in 2008, the fire department celebrated its 50th anniversary. We were founded in 1968, and the town says we host a little thing down under the bridge for that. Also in 2008, we switched our staffing model to a 24-hour shift. That currently consists of 4 shifts where there's 4 people each. As far as the 24-hour shifts go, we're staffing 2 of our three fire stations. 2 at Station 1 on Sabbath Home Road and 2 on Seashore Road. That station 24 hours a day. You can see most of the calls happen there. It also does provide a backup for the island, even in the off-season, when we don't have some staff on in the daytime, because if Station 3 goes out on a call, those folks go out, you still have an immediate response from Station 1. But normally, before we switched to that model, we only had 2 people on. They were working 12-hour shifts, and only Station 1 on Sabbath Home Road had those 2 people at nighttime. So once they were down on the call, you were waiting for volunteers or other folks to respond. So it does provide some backup and have a more immediate response to calls. 2019 upcoming. The big thing I thought everybody talks about budgets. We requested no increase in fire fees. So we're trying to stay within what the county's told us that we're going to be billed out for fire fees. The Station 2 staffing was over on Holden Beach will begin this Friday at 7 o'clock. We staff that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day, to just after Labor Day. That's the highest indices of calls that happen on the island during that time. And most of the calls, and you can see that percentage out to the side, 61%. That's for the entire year of 2018. During that time frame, 61% of the calls happen during that time frame. And in the summertime, that's actually much higher because we have a lot of people out on the beach and things like that. So we're responding to those calls. Also, this Friday and Saturday, we'll be doing our EDA Field the Boot Drive. We're doing that in conjunction with Southport Fire Department and the beach. Folks going over on the bridge. They did it last year. Our folks raised around $11,000 for the Muscular Dystrophy Association last year. It's the first year doing it. It all goes 100% to muscular dystrophy. So it's just a good cause. A lot of fire departments have joined on that around the world, or actually around the United States and so forth, helping them raise money for that too. Also this year we're starting the planning and design of a new fire station. We're a replacement of the Station 1, which is located on Sabbath Home Road. That station's actually been added on to a couple of times. The original fire station that was built in late 1967, 1968 is inside of that building. And you can see, obviously, we've changed a lot over the years, and we've pretty much outgrown. The trucks don't really fit in the apparatus bays anymore. It was designed, obviously, with volunteerism in mind, and as we've added paid staff, we've pretty much outgrown that space. We've had issues with water damage over the years with storms and things as that roof has been added on to, and so forth. Just some general information below that. Just a lot of people don't really, I get asked what you do, you go to the fire, you get that type of stuff. So I listed out some of the services our department provides. Obviously, we do fire response. That's the one everybody gets when you go to fires. We also do a medical first responder program. So whenever someone dials 911, they have a medical emergency, we send what has been in the past at an emergency medical responder level. Over the next year, we're going to transition to all of our full-time staff will be at EMT basic level. They pretty much are now. We have a couple of people who are going to train them to get finished up for that. So we'll be stepping up that level of response. We get on the scene, because there's more fire stations than there are EMS locations. We're generally the first ones there. In the event of emergency, we can start treatment of the patient, get them packaged, get their vital signs, transfer them to EMS, and it allows the ambulance to have a much quicker response than they're not on the scene all the time and get to the hospital quicker. So the rescue services we provide, the surf rescue, we cover all the water in between Shallow River and Lockwood Folly River. Any place in there that an emergency happens on the water, we're going to respond. Boat-based rescue, we have a boat at each fire station. We also do vehicle and machinery rescue, meaning to cut people out of cars, to people getting caught in some type of machinery, or under some agricultural or construction equipment. And we also do have rescue equipment, and we have done several of those over the years with all the construction going on, people hurt on construction sites and things, that need to get those folks down. Our fire station on Savicon Road is a child passenger safety permanent checking station. We have several technicians, and we keep that up to date. So if some folks come in, they have a car seat, they have lots of questions, they don't understand how to put them in, we can train those folks and make sure all our kids are safe traveling up and down the road. We also do various other public service items such as smoke detector installs, some home safety surveys, or lifting assistance calls. That's become one of the more prevalent calls of service for us. Instead, someone slips out of their chair during able to get up, instead of sending an ambulance out to them, they send the fire department out to them and help them get up and get them settled. As long as they're not injured, you don't need an ambulance, so it keeps ambulances available to respond to emergency calls. Our current staffing model, we have 17 full-time positions. 16 of those are, you can see, are shift folks. I'm the other odd person out. I'm the 17th. We currently have 16 part-time employees and currently 14 volunteers. That number has dwindled over the years. You can see, obviously, the national trends, you see it on TV and other things about volunteerism. We've probably, over the last 10 years, that number's probably dropped by, say, 20, 25 people. So everybody's struggling with that. It's not just a local problem, it's a nationwide problem. And then, of course, I put down there, obviously, we cover about 25 square miles, anywhere between, like I said, the Chalote River and Lockwood Folly River, and we go out past the driving range out on Beach Road. So quite a long district, a lot of miles to cover. That's all I had this evening. I understand, I know Chief Todd has sent a couple of letters out there. I think that the fact that you had supported like the beach access and the water tank, that type of things. If you have any questions for me, that's all I have this evening.
Do you have an idea what the response time is for service onto the island?
It varies. We track that monthly. Our average response time is, as district-wide, is probably just over 5 minutes, which is pretty good. 5 minutes is usually what people are shooting for. It varies during the year, during the time of day, and the call location. Basically, if the call's on the east end, technically our station on Savicon Road is closer than the station on the island by miles. I mean, you can pretty much get here just the same speed. We have a much higher, quicker speed limit coming down this way. So if we have a particular month and a lot of calls are on this end, it'll only be just a couple minutes. About the 9-minute timetable, we run in about the 1,000 block or a little past that. By the time we get a call, we get all our gear on. If we're talking about fires and getting to a fire truck, if we're going to a medical call, it's substantially quicker because we don't have to put all the gear on and stuff. We can just get in the truck and go. But for a fire call from Station 1, which would be the closest one if there's no one at the fire station here on the island, about the 1,000 block, you're hitting about the 9-minute mark by the time it goes through 911 and those type of things. So it's kind of hard to staff for the one is. I think on 2018 we had one fire on the island, and that was right around the New Year's when we had the large fire down during the night when it was really cold. So you don't have a lot of them, and trying to staff for one of those type of events would be tremendously more expensive than what it is.
So then other than that one call, fire call, the rest of the calls were for injuries or accidents?
Yeah,
or
we obviously we get called. We code what we find when we go to a call, so it's not uncommon that we might get called for smoke inside of the building, for instance, and they're going to call us out for a structural type fire, which brings a lot of folks. But we get there and find out there's an outlet shorted out.
Okay.
It's not going to get coded as a house fire. It's just an outlet shorted out. So there's a lot of those that they get changed based off of what they give us and what we find when we get there.
Anyone else? Any questions? We appreciate all that you guys do.
Thank you.
Or maybe I should say, do you have any ladies?
Yes,
Well, we appreciate all the guys and ladies.
absolutely.
Thank you.
You got one of ours this evening, so you recognize him. He's one of the junior firefighters at our department. So.
Very good. Very good. Chief Dixon.
Hard to believe it's already Memorial Day. So the police report this month, or the month of April actually, we had 193 service calls, and you can see there on the report what they were, and I would be glad to clarify if you have questions. The one point that I do want to bring up on that is the incident reports in the month of April is up to 14, and you can see on one of the next pages, we actually took several reports for breaking and entering, larcenies, that stuff. It's actually pretty common for this time of year for us. It's not necessarily that it happened in the month of April, but they've sat all winter, and as people are coming down in March, April, and discovering these things, they're finding out, hey, the house was broken into, or my garage was broken into, and I'm missing fishing poles and things of that sort. So we have not had a major rash, but we did take a lot of reports in April. So that's where we're at with that. A couple other things that I did want to mention, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir with the group that's in here, but May 20th, which was yesterday, actually started the prohibition on pets from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the Strand. So I feel like most of the people in this room know that, but it did start yesterday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pets on the Strand are prohibited. And the other thing I did want to mention is as we're getting into this season, beach equipment removal. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir of this group, but please, if you're using beach equipment, take it with you when you go. Those are the two things I wanted to mention, and if you have any questions on this, I'll be glad to answer what I can.
Questions? Mike?
Chief?
Yes, sir.
You have 15 traffic stops.
Yes, sir.
Were there any violations, any citations issued?
I did not print those numbers, so I'm not 100% sure on that. I do know that there was one DWI arrest in April, so at least one of those was off of a traffic stop. That's the only one that I know of that was significant. I am sure the other ones were probably minor traffic violations.
All right, thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and your staff as well, sir. Mr. Fletcher?
We're coming up on the 7th month, following the time of the last audit report should have been submitted to the LGC. There are lots and lots of reasons, but I would ask the town manager to give us an update on where we are and if there are any current delays.
We received the final draft from Rise and Associates, have provided a few corrections back to them. They subsequently provided that back to us. I've got to develop the management discussion and analysis along with the fixes to the two findings in the report. I'm aiming for not this week as we discussed earlier, John, but it's probably going to be the end of next week before I can have that prepared and back to the auditor for their finalization.
And that's where we'll have a meeting with the auditor to
Assuming when they assemble it, succinctly, that we will get that back promptly. But that's where I am in that effort.
Mr. Freer?
Okay, yeah, we've gone through a lot of budget workshops, and we now have the budget message for this year. And I know we're going to have a public, what's the term? Hearing, sorry. Public hearing in about a month, but I wanted to go through some of the things that I had noticed, and I actually talked to Dave earlier this week. One of the big issues that I noticed, and David said he's going to address it, is the tax rate and revenue neutral for the tax rate. David, can you talk to that?
Yeah, the requirement to publish, generally speaking, and being very, very basic, there's a requirement to publish the revenue neutral tax rate in a year when a reappraisal of real property is conducted. And the simple explanation for that is what will be with the new appraised value, what's the tax rate that would be charged that will raise the same amount of taxes that you had last year. And that's the explanation on that.
Yeah. So one of the goals was basically, and we talked about our understanding was we wanted to be revenue neutral on a budget as a board. And one of the top goals was no new taxes. So if you don't do a revenue neutral, you're essentially raising taxes.
Well, I mean, evidently something was lost in translation between that discussion and what I and the rest of the staff gathered. You know, in the minutes tonight, you know, if the quote is when we went through, you know, no new taxes, and I had asked, is that a no new taxes or no new tax rate, and the board agreed that it was the same
Yeah, I saw the
tax
same
rate.
thing.
So, so we proceeded all through the workshops with using the 22-cent tax rate. Now, if that was right, wrong, or different, that's what we did.
Yeah, I saw the same in the minutes that they're confused about that. But I'm pretty confident, and I'd love to hear it from the other board members about that. You know, if you saw, I also in the minutes, I thought I said, made myself clear after that we wanted the budget revenue neutral, but I understand there was a confusion. So I think that our number one goal that we agreed on is to not raise the taxes. So I would request to modify the budget to be revenue neutral. So that would be a 20-cent tax rate instead of a 22-cent tax rate.
Well, maybe. Maybe. There's some,
You
there's
consider
some
growth.
qualifiers in there, but what we'll do, I mean, is we can go back and recalibrate that and make sure that the revenue neutral tax rate is accurately calculated.
But the revenue neutral tax rate would give us actually more money than we got last year, am I correct? Because you get 1 year's worth of growth of new houses and improvements that you would expect to bill for.
It's actually 4 years of growth because
You average it for,
there's an annual growth rate that's
you
spread across
could
4
put that in the budget then above what we got last year.
Right.
And also, you know, the effect this would have on, right, we want to improve the general fund balance ratio, which it should, right, if we reduce the expenses to meet the revenue neutral goal. And also make sure the B-part fund balance and within that sand fund balance would also not be negatively affected.
So David's already said he's going back and recalculating.
Right.
The number, you know,
what I'm interpreting here is that, what you're proposing is that, that the budget ordinance that's entertained at the hearing, reflects a revenue neutral tax rate instead of the 22 cents that's proposed.
Yes, sir.
I guess this is where I would like to, again, raise the issue of the idea that what we're discussing here now is we don't want to have a hidden tax, right? We want to be revenue neutral. So, my suggestion and request last year and during budget meetings this year is that we should reduce the taxes by 2 cents because of the same thing. We got reimbursed a large sum of money by FEMA, which allowed us to put $3 million in the sand fund, and which would allow us to reduce the tax rate by 2 cents. My colleagues voted against that last year, and are voting against it again this year, and I don't see the difference between the two of them. We are artificially keeping the tax rate higher by at least 2 cents when we could lower it to meet the needs of the people. Put it another way, if the board at the time, Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Fuel, at the time knew that we were going to be reimbursed the FEMA money, you would never authorize a tax rate of 22 cents because it would have been necessary. Just like when we're talking about the central reach reimbursement, nobody is talking about raising the tax rate $25 million to pay for it, right? We're going to use the money we have, we're going to have a revolving credit. And that's exactly what happened with the FEMA money that we got from Matthew. We borrowed money with the firm belief that the town needed to borrow that money, but unbeknownst to us, Hurricane Matthew came in and FEMA reimbursed us for the actual work that was done on the Central Beach project. We got reimbursed, we didn't expend all the money, we have more money in the B Park fund now than we had before the Central Beach Park began, and I just don't see how this doesn't mesh. We're artificially taxing the people more than needs to be taxed. We're taking $250,000 and putting that in the big part.
Can I make an observation? If we gave $250,000 back today, we're $400,000 drop in the general fund this year. Just, if you're revenue neutral, you're 180, well, the current one right now is $186,000 increase.
We're taking $250,000 from the general fund and putting it into the B part fund. And I'm saying that that money should be a tax reduction.
Then you're gonna reduce the general fund by $250,000. Which is,
What we're arguing, what we're deciding and what we think is right now, we're going to reduce the fund now by that 2 cents because it's a hidden tax.
no, we're not gonna raise it.
Right, we're not gonna raise it.
We're not gonna raise it.
It's the same effect. Your board, and I would have done the same thing at the time. I'm just saying, but the prior board listened to what we needed to do to finance the Central Reach and authorized a tax rate of 22 cents because you believed it was necessary. It wasn't necessary because we got the reimbursement.
But we had to spend the money to get it.
But you got the money back, John. If you spent $100,000 and you put the $100,000 back in your bank account, you'd still have it, right? If you borrowed $100 from me to do something and spent it, but the insurance company gave you back the 100 and gave it to me, where did you lose any money? Well, I think it's pretty clear. What we're doing, and I believe it, rightfully so, we're saying we're not going to impose a higher tax rate on the people of the town than necessary. So we want to keep it at the 20 cents. What we're doing with the Central Reach and keeping it even at the 20 cents to 18 is we are artificially keeping the 2 cent tax. That it would never have been placed, the burden would have never been placed on the taxpayer if you knew that the reimbursement money was going to come down the pipe. Never would have. So it doesn't make any difference what you want to talk about it. You've got the money, we got the money, we benefited from that money. We put $3,000 in the sand fund, and now we're putting $250,000 in the sand fund. It's a good cause. I'm not arguing it's not a good cause, but there are many good causes that could use the $250,000 that the new tax rate would have. But we want to make it revenue neutral, and we don't want to have a hidden tax. And I'm saying to you that the same thing is true. If we don't lower the money, if we don't give a reimbursement based on the money that we got from FEMA, we are artificially taxing the people in the town, and we've raised their taxes without being upfront about it.
And I don't agree because we were upfront with it. Everybody knew what we did and why we did it. And in fact, the B part is being reduced over $300,000 this year. So that money was left is going to be spent.
So I agree, we're not raising taxes, we're not lowering it. We're not lowering it we're not changing it every year to the ebb and flow of the funding. Our B part funding balance is being reduced by $316,000. Our B part funding, our general fund balance ratio is not to where our target is. Our B part funding is $3 million, which we know that Central Reach is going to, that we plan on doing it every 10 years, or we should be planning on doing it 10 years. And it cost $15 million a couple of years ago, and it's probably going to cost $20 million in 7
Can I
years.
just answer one or two of those? And then you can just bring up more.
So
It's a totally different issue. You're talking about the fund and whether the fund is, I'm not questioning whether the fund is justified or not. I'm not questioning whether there should be money in the fund. What I'm saying to you is, by not lowering the taxes, we are doing exactly what we're voting against here. We are doing hidden taxes. We, as a town, assumed a $15 million liability, when if we knew we were going to get FEMA reimbursement, we would have never assumed that. Nobody is going to say to us in the next year that we have to have $25 million to take care of CRR. And second, if we're going to look at CRR, then don't use the tactic that we have to have this great amount of money in the next 10 years, because we're going to have more sand on the beach in 2 or 3 more years when we complete the CRR than we had before we did the original Central Beach project. We're going to have another 30 or 40 feet at least of beach than when we completed the Central Beach project, and it's not going to cost us anything. We're going to have to upfront the money, but we're going to be reimbursed that money. So you can raise all the issues you want, and a lot of them are valid, and a lot. The fundamental issue is, are we taxing people inappropriately without letting them know that? And I will say this, I've said it 100 times, I said it before I got on this board. I raised the issue the first day that I heard that we would get FEMA reimbursement, and it's simple mathematics. We spent X, we got reimbursed by a bunch of money, and we didn't lower the taxes appropriately to recognize the amount of money that we got reimbursed. That's the total argument. Not arguing about the justification of money or spending money or anything else.
And the current debt on the Central Reach is what? 12, right?
Well,
10-8.
10-8 now.
current.
That's good, coming down.
I think.
Yeah, so we put 3 down, we borrowed 12,
Yeah.
not the entire 15. So I think I'm looking at the long game of having monies in the B Park fund balance so we can do reimbursable, so we can spend the money. We've got money to spend, so we can get reimbursed. You can't get reimbursed by spending nothing.
Right. David, do we have enough money in the B-Part fund to, in your opinion, to fund the CLR?
There's
We have $6 million in the B-Part.
6.8 million.
So is that enough money to prime the pump?
It's gonna take 25 million, and it'll pay a piece of it, but we're gonna have to get a bridge loan to pay it in order to get the reimbursements. No, 6 million is not enough for $25 million program. No is the answer. 6 million won't pay a $25 million.
Will another $250,000 do that?
No, sir.
Okay. That's what it is. It's a $250,000 transfer into the B-Part fund. And again,
But then we just, didn't we appropriate 316,000 or $316,559 into the B-Park fund?
That's correct.
Yeah.
for
So,
what?
well, I guess we were trying to balance something there, right?
So you-
But you're taking it from someplace else, I don't know where we took it from.
What we're doing is taking $250,000 from the general fund and putting it in the B-Part fund. And again, we're having circular reasoning. If you believe that what we should do here tonight is go with the revenue neutral so that we don't have any hidden taxes on the people, then you should be in favor of lowering the tax rate to 2 cents, because that's exactly the effect of what's happening. That's my position, that's my argument.
That's.
Okay, what are we doing?
We're good?
I'd be more comfortable if y'all,
Well, I guess I would make a motion and you can vote against it then. I would make a motion that instead of just asking the budget to be adjusted to be revenue neutral, that there be a 2-cent tax reduction incorporated into it. So the new tax rate would be 18 cents or thereabouts, depending on it, rather than the 20 cents that's listed in the budget message. Don't have any interest.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies. Any more motions? Any more?
David, would you like to make the motion to go, would you like me to officially make the motion to?
It would be better for me.
Okay. Yeah, I make the motion that we direct the town manager to adjust the current budget to revenue neutral.
Second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Executive?
Yes. Oh, I'm in favor of revenue neutral. I think it should be better than revenue neutral.
So it's a unanimous 4-0 vote, right? All right, what else you got? Are you through?
Yes, sir.
Still Mr. Freer.
Yeah, I was waiting for you.
Yeah, okay.
Right, no problems. Yeah, it's the Holden Beach, the Inlet and Beach Protection Board, met on April 25th. I want to make a few comments, thank you for their hard work. Just so everybody knows, we're calling the Central Reach Reimbursement Project, as to not confuse with a follow-on to Central Reach. We talked about that a few times. Also, to update folks, the Wider and Deeper project has been canceled. The county was not interested in taking the lead in that project. Therefore, we're not interested in taking over for that.
The tremendous cost and the liabilities associated.
Right, they didn't want to take the lead because of the liabilities, basically, the cost. And this is in the report here. Also, they talk about work continues on obtaining easements for the East End property owners. Looking at the town attorney.
It does.
Is that still accurate? Okay, and we're still on schedule?
We're still on schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have to provide the Corps with any information or current documentation?
Yeah, we've sent them a copy of each easement that's been recorded, and we had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago where we confirmed how they would like to receive information for any complaints for condemnation that are filed. And I have spoken with their real estate person as recently as 5 o'clock this afternoon. So we are all in good communication.
And
We can breathe easy.
that's to be ready for the next dredging on the crossing, so we can get that sand in East End. Also, they talked about there's been a lot of work on the comprehensive long-term plan. Interested in when that plan is going to be available to the Board of Commissioners at some draft level, or?
The draft is going to the Inlet Beach Board, the first draft for Thursday's meeting. They'll be working on that, and they're looking at bringing it to the board in the Kathy, the planner's looking at bringing it to the board in the summer. She was thinking July, August timeframe.
Okay, sooner the better. Okay, that's all I have for this report. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clemens? Public Works.
Good evening, Super Cook Station number 4 updates and that report since our last meeting. The contractor was actually wrapped that project up, finished all the remaining items and bonus points list last week. That's pretty much complete. A separate part of that didn't have anything to do with that contract that I requested from us was quote on some gas monitors and gas detectors that I've yet to receive the quote from. Other than that, I'll have it over hand in the next few days. And also, we haven't got the last pay request actually totally cleaned up as far as another rail and the project. I feel like we're still in pretty good shape. Maybe we'll have that done in the next few weeks. Moving on, I was hoping that we could have a contract on hand to receive Pump Station 3. And we actually only received that from the attorney just a few days ago. We haven't had the time to go through it and all the details. I have to make sure it was ready to present it to you. sometime in the next few weeks, we might have had, and that's pretty much about what we are, and we'll see this bill. It's only been a year, but it's like, like it's been 2 years of my life that we were talking about that pump station. See that can finally got over here.
Well, we might get to do it all over again.
Yeah. We'll call that progress, at least it'd be a gift. Other than that, that's really about all I got to say. Like I said, I wish we could have had that contract and everything over to make something happen now, but we just didn't get that schedule is what we delivered to us. I don't know if it's up to you, what really.
Is there any impact to the schedule for them through this contract being delayed?
We don't have a schedule yet.
Well, we had a schedule from Mr. Green, a preliminary schedule.
Yeah, preliminary. Yes.
Yes.
It's a tight schedule, either way you slice it, but there's something that we could do,
This lift station is going to be more tricky than the other one because of the sound attenuation issues and the acoustical engineering that has to go along with that. What I foresee is that with the budget ordinance revisions that y'all have directed at the next board meeting, we'll be ready to present that contract. But that contract for the engineering services is going to be significantly more expensive than the previous one, and it's also more expensive than the funds that were appropriated in the current year because of the acoustical engineering requirements that are on in that. So what I forecast is that we'll roll those same proposed contract costs into the budget ordinance consideration.
So were those acoustical considerations part in the original McGill?
No.
Well, still don't know why we're still using that, but.
I mean, it's what we had at the time when we were swagging. Yeah.
Any more questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
We can skip over number 16, go to number 17, town clerk Fennel.
We have a vacancy on the Inlet and Beach Protection Board, and I would recommend that you hold interviews for the position before the next board meeting at 6:45, June 18th.
6:45.
Very good.
Okay?
By consensus, that is acceptable. Number 18.
I have the latest supplement to the Holden Beach Code of Ordinances. It just codifies the ordinances that you have already approved. It's just a housekeeping issue, so I would just need you to approve the ordinance if you accept the changes.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion made, second, discussion, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no, it's unanimous. Mr. Hood, do you have a report?
Yes, sir. Briefly, 2 items. Want to apprise the board that we've received a Camel Walkway grant in the amount of $21,000. We'll execute that contract, and it is in the budget for next year. And we've also been fortunate enough that we have a tentative approval on the award for the state's storm damage assessment reimbursement for some of the engineering evaluations and surveys after the hurricanes. That also is about $20,000. Memorial Day is upcoming. First concert of the season is Sunday, and if my eyes didn't deceive me, the splash pad is tested operational and will be on this weekend.
I think I saw some water.
Didn't I see you working, or is it broke?
It is, but we need to do some maintenance, so we're
Okay.
leaving it on, but not encouraging people to get on it until the weekend.
It'll be running this weekend.
It'll be running this
It'll be
weekend.
running this weekend.
My bar is low.
Can I ask you a couple? Can I ask you a couple questions, David? When is the weekly, one of the changes taking place, like weekly recycling and twice a week pickup and
Are you not on my email blast? I'm just kidding. I sent out an email blast today because rollback actually started, island-wide rollback started today, and I apologize that I did not get
We
that.
haven't had a single complaint yet.
But yes, island-wide rollback was today. Weekly recycling will actually, it starts June, but we have pickup next week, so weekly as of next Tuesday.
well, I got picked up today, which I thought.
It was an error. They did not realize it, and they
Saw some
once
people had their blue cans out, so I put mine out. Okay.
once they realized that they headed off the island. So everybody did not get it, but some people did get it today. So they did not realize that it'll start next week, and then Saturday trash pickup actually starts this Saturday.
And how about the trash cans on the beach? You know, have they been placed on the beach?
I'm punting
He
out.
actually started putting all of them in place today. I think he finished up today, getting them all in order there, we'll be ready for the weekend.
Okay, and then picked up obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all.
The mayor's comments are brief. Had a couple calls about, are we gonna allow people to smoke on the beach? 'Cause- and then, I think it was last night or night before last, I saw on the news that some beach up in Hanover County or somewhere that way is talking about it too, so I guess that's our next.
That'll be our next challenge.
I can give you a legal opinion on that at any time that you're ready. I've already dealt with
We're
that
not ready.
issue.
I'm not ready.
All right, so you're a professional on that.
Something like that.
I would simply add one more thing, and that is that with the weather forecast and the economy the way it is, all indications are we're going to probably have a good chance of a full house this weekend and maybe the biggest crowd we've ever had. So we'll see how it works out. Yeah. John?
Just an update, the weather's changed some, so the water is warmer in the ocean. The jellyfish are flourishing and washing up on shore, and the turtles are following them. Yesterday was the day that we normally have our first nest. Today, we had 6 turtles come on the beach. 5 of them laid eggs. So as of today, we have 11 nests.
Wow.
Last year, we had a total of 35 for the year. So the anticipation is we're gonna get flooded with turtles this year. A big, I had 3 on Saturday, 3 out of 3. Today was 5 out of 6. Extremely unusual. But the good news is they love our beach now. When we first did Central Reach, it was packed and hard and shelly. They didn't like it hard to dig in it. It's much easier to dig in now, so they're laying their eggs when they come on shore. So anticipate it, but early July will be the hatching time. We actually expect the first nest will hatch before July the 4th, which is probably the earliest we'll have had it.
Mike?
I'd just like to thank everybody for showing up and participating in participatory development. And on behalf of Commissioner Kwiatkowski, she sends her apologies for not being able to attend the meeting tonight, but she'll be here for the June meeting.
Joe?
Just a Memorial Day weekend, be safe, remember the ocean, it's a great place to swim in, and just remind your families about any possibility of recurrence. Like I do to my own grandchildren as well, but thanks for coming out this evening.
Yeah, thanks for everybody coming out, and I agree, there's been a lot of riptide currents, and people have been getting caught in them, so yeah, be careful this weekend. Thanks.
Public comments, anybody want to talk about anything? Come to the microphone, give us your name and tell us who you are and who you is, sir.
Good evening, Ashley Royal, 144 Sailfish Drive. I'm getting used to sitting back here and not being able to ask questions during the discussion, so I have a couple of observations. Fran Wade, I want to compliment you on your report on the Lockwood-Follian sedimentation analysis. I was taken aback by the fact that Oak Island West Oak Island is accretional, and of course Holden Beach East End is erosional. So it's a shame that Oak Island was successful in getting sand placed on an accretional beach. That just doesn't past logic to me. So to the board, I would say that this may be an opportunity to consider again. I've missed a few meetings, so maybe there has been some movement in securing a lobbyist or someone to speak for the interests of the Holden Beach town. But to me, this was a case here where there should have been some voice of reason that could have prevented that from happening. So if we learn from history, maybe it won't repeat itself.
Actually, there was a meeting today at 4:30 with the lobbyist.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right.
And Commissioner Sullivan, I appreciate what you said about the budget neutral message. And having served on that board where we did raise the tax rate by 2 cents to fund Central Reach, today to me does show that there's justification to reduce it by 2 cents. So I'll just say I was disappointed that the board voted to keep the 2 cents in there. I understand what you're spending it for, but if you're reimbursed, then we should have given that back to the citizens. And I was interested in the agenda item number 16, maximum house size construction, just a discussion on that. It may have been in the package or in the email. I don't remember seeing it, but I guess I would hope that if Mr. Evans couldn't be here, somebody could represent that so we could have heard it tonight. So I'm assuming it will be in next month's agenda.
It's in pages 45 through the next several pages. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak about anything? All right, thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, I guess we need a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye. Madam Clerk, if you'll read your rule.
Executive session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3 to consult with the town attorney.
All right, we will be there for a little while, I hope. You're welcome to wait.